1978, and not many people base their debut #1 on a literary classic, but not many people are Kate Bush.
Kate was a unique talent. Artists didn't dare to do things like that. This was someone who had no fear.
It's one of those songs that everybody knows. It's incredibly special, and it launched one of the great careers.
The ascent to Wuthering Heights began in the mid-70s, when Kate Bush was famously discovered by Pink Floyd's Dave Gilmour, who put up the money for the 16-year-old to record a professional studio demo with an up-and-coming young producer.
I went up to their Pink Floyd office and David introduced me to Kate. Listened to some of her music, was very impressed. I mean, she was extraordinary talent, very quiet initially, but as soon as you got her talking about music, she lit up. David played me several songs. The obvious standout one was Remember the Child in His Eyes. He just said, right, book a studio, do that and a couple of other songs, and we'll see what comes out of it.
He's here again, the man with the child in his eyes.
This is the original score of Remember the Child in His Eyes. As you can see, it actually says Kathy Bush at the top rather than Kate, which is how she was known then. Air Studios, on the 19th of June, 1975. And I threw her into a studio, sitting at a piano, and she was brilliant.
An excited Dave Gilmour took the tape straight to EMI executive Bob Mercer.
David went into Bob's office, put the tape down on the desk, and looked at him in the eye and said, here's this girl you're going to sign. And as Bob Mercer told me later, when you've got the lead guitarist and singer of the Pink Floyd sitting there telling you you're going to sign it, you don't tend to argue with them.
It would be 2 years before Kate released a record, during which time she wrote more songs and honed the dance skills that would be a massive part of the success of Wuthering Heights.
She definitely felt that she was a rounded artist, really. She was a dancer, she was a lyricist, she was a composer, she was a performer. It's hard to think of anyone who did that before her in exactly the same way.
And Kate would draw on literature too, penning a song during those 2 preparatory years inspired by Emily Bronte's Gothic novel, written here in Haworth, West Yorkshire.
The intense horror of nightmare came over me. I tried to draw back my arm, but the hand clung to it, and a most melancholy voice sobbed, "Let me in, let me in." "Who are you?" I asked, struggling, meanwhile, to disengage myself. "Catherine Linton," it replied shiveringly. "I'm come home. I'd lost my way on the moor." It's all there, coming home, the landscape and the fact that it's a ghost and the window and everything is there. You could see why that would captivate and sort of set flight to the imagination of the young Kate.
She came round to my flat, said, I want to play you another song. OK. So she sat down on the piano and ding, 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 ding. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And she played the whole song right through and then turned around to me and said, you know, do you think that's OK? Is it good enough to go on the album? And I said, oh, yes, definitely.
Although it turns out we've all been mishearing the first line of this iconic song for 40 years.
A lot of people think that it's out on the wild and windy moors, which would make perfect sense, but it's not. It's wily, windy moors.
Out on the windy moors, we'd roll and fall in green.
Why wily?
You had a
There is that sense that the mood of the moorland changes, that the moor has its own personality, and it chooses what side of itself it's going to show you.
I hated you, I loved you too. Bad dreams in the night. He told me I was going to lose the fight. Leave behind my walking through the high sea. It's me, I can't be, I can't call my so cold.
all that there was originally was just Kate playing it on the piano. So I had to work out where the guitars come in, where does the drums come in, where does the bass come in, which is part of my job as an arranger producer. The strings actually come in at the beginning of verse 2. I wanted them to be there to support that verse. Right now, just when it's dark and lonely, the warmth of the strings almost contradicts that, but I quite like that idea.
Pop music was here. Kate Bush, she was way over here something. She was like way off in the distance. She was from a different galaxy. And then there is the voice, doing things that you hadn't heard a female singer do before. Not in pop music.
She can sing very low alto parts and incredibly high off the top of the treble clef.
At first, it was like, is that how she sings? It was so high-pitched and it was so shrill. And we later found out that, yes, she did sing a bit like that, but she was exaggerating it to play the part of Kathy, this sort of banshee.
I'd never heard anything like it or seen anything quite like that video. You could see the fact that she'd studied mime and dance and, she was kind of the real deal.
It does have that very ethereal feel to it, that whole video. You are hypnotized as the viewer by the expression on her face and those fabulous eyes, but the expressive dancing as well. It just feels much more like it's instinctive and it's just coming from her gut, how she feels in the moment.
After Wuthering Heights topped the UK charts for 4 weeks, 2 top 10 albums would follow. And then in 1979, a tour which has become the stuff of legend. The sellout shows with Wuthering Heights as the predictable final encore combine music, dance and mime. But this explosion of creativity would come at a cost.
After about 18 months, she thought, I'm just working nonstop. I can't do this, or else I'll never write more songs. So hence she became what some people mistakenly thought was a reclusive figure. But actually, she preferred writing songs and making records.
It doesn't hurt me. Do you wanna feel how it feels?
The next 35 years saw 9 hit albums, but no further tours. Even interviews were rare, with DJ Mark Radcliffe being one of very few granted the privilege.
I used to talk to her and say, are you ever going to do any more gigs? And she always said, I haven't ruled it out. But there was a point in time at which she'd been not ruling it out for a very long time.
Kate's prolonged low profile saw fans fill in the gaps based on the persona she'd taken in her most famous hit all those years ago.
She'd often been called a recluse, which is not true at all. She'd just lived a life out of the showbiz life. She did once say to her, you say, people think that I am this weird Gothic woman who lives in some kind of turreted castle and never goes anywhere. I just think she lived a life of being a mum and made a record when she felt like it. I think it was as simple as that.
Then, out of the blue, in 2014, she returned to the stage with a 5-week residency at the Hammersmith Apollo. A notable absentee from the set list was her only #1 hit, Wuthering Heights. But 4 years later, she paid tribute to the woman who inspired her breakthrough hit in a permanent way up on the wily, windy Yorkshire moors.
And here it is. Wow.
When, as part of the bicentenary celebrations of Emily Bronte's birth, Kate wrote an inscription for this memorial stone.
Actually, from a distance, it's quite hard to read it. You can't go back too far, or else you'll fall over a very steep hillock down into a rocky stream. But close up, I mean, it is very clear. She stands outside, a book in her hands. Her name is Kathy. I cannot reach this window. Open it, I pray. But this window is a door to a lonely world that longs to play. Ah, Emily, come in and stay. And I think it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing to see. For Kate Bush to have launched her career being so inspired by Wuthering Heights, and for her to put these words here in Bronte country, which are going to stay here forever. So they're forever entwined, and forever there will be her sort of note of thanks and inspiration to Emily. I think it's the perfect end to the story, in a way.